I want to play Arms. Fury is too mainstream. Everyone's doing Fury and I want to feel special. This just tells me Arms is not good. Fuck it, I'm playing Arms. What about you? Following up on the single target, raid focused guide, it's only natural to bring in the AoE boys in the mix for that weekly chest. In today's video, I will go over the basics of playing Arms in dungeons, and really any major AoE situation. Similar to the raid guide, which you can take to dungeons on tyrannical weeks, this one you can take into raids for certain AoE fights. Well, there aren't that many this time around, but hey, at least you have the option if you need it. Dungeons are a bit more flexible when it comes to talents, mainly because of the weekly affixes, your group, and your gear. All of these can make some talents good, some talents better. I will go over one by one what talents are performing the best and what talents generally people are going with. This won't mean that they will be the be-all end-all. Skim, search, and choose what fits your playstyle. Starting off on the first tier, we have War Machine. This bad boy procs once you have killed a target with a 10 rage generation and 30% movement speed. It also gives your auto attacks 10% more rage generation. In an ideal situation, you'll kill your targets one at a time, because execute. So this baby should be up for you pretty much all the time. Next row, take Stormbolt. You'll have a stun on demand for those mobs that cannot be interrupted. Or maybe you just want to relieve some pressure off of your tank cause you care so much. Either way, since we don't have Shockwave anymore, take this guy. Your other option is double time if your group or your run doesn't need any single target stuns. For the third row we have two options. Massacre seems to be the more popular one. It's really good in hierarchies and versus bosses in general, particularly with the Test of Might azerite trait, since you get to start dumping massive amounts of rage way quicker, getting bigger strength buffs. Alternatively, Fervor of Battle gives higher damage output in large pulls, and by large I mean 4 or 5 targets and more. One thing Fervor of Battle does do extra, with the azerite trait Crushing Assault, the slam that it procs does get cleaved with sweeping strikes. So again, play with both, since both affect your playstyle quite a bit, and see which one you prefer more. Next row, I recommend Second Wind. If you're playing correctly and avoiding avoidable damage, then this guy will proc pretty often, and once it does, the healing it does is pretty good. You can opt for defensive stance if you want, but I would recommend Second Wind, especially on fights where you don't take constant damage every few seconds. Level 75 Talent Row gives us Warbreaker, hands down. The other two choices are good, don't get me wrong, but they're too situational. And since we cannot reset talents mid-run, Warbreaker satisfies all AoE needs. Level 90, take Avatar. It's good for on-demand burst situations. Couple this guy with Bladestorm and even Warbreaker and you will melt through any AoE pack. Lastly, same as single target, Anger Management is the go-to. You generate a lot of rage in M+, which makes spending it even more beneficial. Reducing the cooldown on Bladestorm and Warbreaker is simply one of the few reasons we have left to be taken into a Mythic Plus. In order to properly gear yourself, you need to understand your stat priorities. You can either take the general template, which is this, and start from here. Or you can sim yourself and you might get something like this, which is what my stat weights are. Crit is usually way better in AoE, with haste taking the lead on single target, although the impact won't be major. I recommend picking the highest high level gear you get or the one with highest crit on it. With this being said, when going for trinkets, this is currently how they rank in terms of AoE DPS potential. Some of the trinkets on the list, like Doom's Fury, Lion's Strength or Dinobone, come from world bosses and world quests that have the base high level capped at around 370, so unless they Titan Forge, they won't be the best in slots. You can farm them by all means. But if you want more reliable sources, Everchill Anchor that drops from Jaina is actually the best one on the list. And Knot of Ancient Fury drops from the Dark Shore World Boss, which is 400 eye level baseline. If you have to aim for any of the ones on the list, aim for these two. Unless you are mega lucky, which means you probably have Invincible also. So go suck a lemon. For azerite traits, it's actually very simple. We only have 3 good traits, and regardless if you stack them or not, this is their current standing while simmed for AoE. Seismic Wave is by far the best one, making your overpower release an AoE wave of damage, making it a legitimate rotational priority. Overpower, that is. Lord of War is a decent close second. It deals extra damage and generates 10 rage. The damage component stacks, of course, but the rage generation does not, so don't get too excited now. But the rage generation is good enough. Oftentimes I find myself delaying Warbreaker just a bit so I don't rage cap, which is not always ideal. Other times I can safely pop it and it will give me the extra oomph to start blowing some fools. These of course are not the only ones out there that are good, and chances are it will be pretty hard to get just these 3 on all of your slots. So it's better to always sim your traits on raid bots. That way you can mix and match. For instance, Lord of War goes well with Test of Might because of the rage availability. If you found this video useful, like and subscribe to our channel. We already have the raid guide or the single target guide for arms already up, and you can check it right here on MarcelianOnline. Or maybe you want something different, like a different spec? We got those too. Whatever it is, if we haven't covered it already, we will in the future. Hashtag soon. Trademark. When it comes to the rotation, the first thing you need to take into account is our spell, Sweeping Strikes. Sweeping Strikes replicates any single target ability, even hamstring, onto a second target within 8 yards for 75% of the damage. This affects secondary effects like bleeds, deep wounds, for instance, meaning that once you mortal strike or execute a target with Sweeping Strikes on, both of the affected enemies will get the debuff. As such, when you are fighting 2 targets, the rotation is the same as it is in single target. You just start everything with Sweeping Strikes. If you want more details about the single target rotation, check our arms guide for raids. For 3 or more targets, the priority rotation starts with Sweeping Strikes, followed by Avatar and Colossus Smash. If you are playing with the Warbreaker talent, then you can cast Avatar and Warbreaker before Sweeping Strikes, so you can save those GCDs for something else, since Warbreaker already hits in an AoE fashion and Sweeping Strikes won't change anything about it. The next most important skill is Blade Storm during the Colossus Smash debuff. However, if you have the Test of Might trait, similar to single target, you will save Blade Storm until after the Colossus Smash debuff wears off, so you can pair those 2 together. The next most important spell to cast is Execute, followed up by Overpower and Mortal Strike. Use Slam only during Sweeping Strikes and fill in with Whirlwind. When you are fighting 4 more targets, you start the same way. Avatar into Warbreaker into Sweeping Strikes. Bladestorm if you don't have Test of Might. If you do, save Bladestorm for after the Colossus Smash debuff wears off. Next, you only execute if you have Sweeping Strikes up. After this, Mortal Strike only if you have Sweeping Strikes up. Fill in Whirlwinds as much as you can during the Colossus Smash window. After this, Overpower into Whirlwind as a filler. Again, when fighting more than 4 targets, only use Execute and Mortal Strike during Sweeping Strikes. If you don't have Sweeping Strikes up, only use Overpower into Whirlwinds. And that's it. The priority / rotation applies to Execute phases as well, so keep that in mind. For consumables, use Haste with priority. That means Haste Gems and Haste Ring enchants. The weapon enchant though should be Gale Force Striking. Try to have one gem be the Kraken's Eye of Strength. For food, always grab the feast that gives you strength, if not, the highest haste food you have. Lastly, use the battle potion Bursting Blood. Every week we cover a different spec, in the hopes of getting something for all you nerds out there. But maybe you're into PvP stuff, which is covered by Marcelian. For all of this and more, follow us on social media, where we post updates on our new releases, new videos, and we can even start a conversation. Maybe a little bit of a candlelight, some berry white, and after... Island Expeditions! Woo! Woo!